Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Live at the Waterhole on this Halloween day. We've started the afternoon off up in Lantoro in Kenya. Thanks to One Earth and African for these wonderful images of a hamarkop, the hammerhead bird. But my name is Ben Coley. I'll be looking after you and spending the next 2 hours with you, checking all the different cameras and hopefully bringing you some interesting insights and discussions into what we are looking at. And as always, it's live, it's interactive, and we would very much like to hear your questions and comments. So please do send them through. Feel free to ask anything, even if it's not relevant to what we happen to be seeing on the screen. The wonderful people in Johannesburg are making this possible, of course, with our tech team, and I have Tulu in my ear helping me navigate the cameras. And I also want to say a special thank you to Amy, who covered me yesterday because I had some power issues after a bit of an electrical storm here in the Housebreid area a couple of days ago that involved quite a lot of damage to some of the surrounding townships, which was pretty horrible. And we had hail, we had all sorts, not too much here in Hoodspray, but the surrounding area did get quite a lot of rain. We had about 7 or 8 mils, but did do some damage to power lines. So obviously, we wish everybody who was affected all the best, but it seems the power situation is stable now. But lovely views of this hammerkop. We do get some beautiful birding opportunities up here in Lentore in Kenya. Trying to see what that hammerkop was doing with his mouth open and shaking around. Looks as if possibly regurgitating something. Of course, they do like to feast on all things aquatic, so frogs particularly, and I'm sure little arthropods, possibly even some freshwater crustaceans as well, small fish. It's a very diagnostic shape of the head. You can certainly see where the name hammerkop or hammerhead came from. And a bit of a stretch. Beautiful markings on the undertail. We don't often get to see those. Well, since it's Halloween, it's probably worth pointing out that homocops are often seen as bad omens in African folklore, certainly in African star lore as well. They're considered the lightning bird. If one sits on your house, there's a chance that it might get struck by lightning, so that's not a good thing, obviously. And there is a story with relation to shooting stars. As when a shooting star falls out of the sky, or I should say enters our atmosphere at least, its path denotes where the village is that's going to be afflicted, and it often is a portent of the death of an important person, a tribal elder or a tribal chief. And it's so said that the Hamakop sits by the water, staring into the water, waiting to see the reflection of the shooting star, and then will fly to the afflicted person's house and either fly over or sit on their house as an omen of the terrible things to come. So generally seen as quite a negatively connotated bird in African folklore, the poor homocop. What are you up to, Mr. Homocop or Mrs. Homocop? There's no difference between the sexes. Taking advantage of something in that little knot of that tree, whether or not he's found some little arboreal insects to feast on. I suppose one insect is as good as another, doesn't have to be aquatic. Greetings, Darcy Miller. Thank you for joining us all the way from Indiana, and also Mercedes Bean. Nice to hear from you again. Ooh, looks like an oxpecker in the background as well. It's interesting. Hammerkop. Yeah, looks like two red-billed oxpeckers taking advantage of a bit of shade in what looks like it could be an umbrella thorn, order Acacia tortilis. Never quite sure with the umbrella thorn now. I'd have to go and check whether it's a Vachellia or a Senegalia. Vachelias, they're the new names for the acacias. Vachelias with the straight thorns and Senegalia with the hook thorns. But of course, umbrella thorns have both. So I can't remember off the top of my head which category they fall under now, or which genus, I should say. But I suppose if we wanted a Halloween-themed bird, an oxpecker is as good as any, with its penchant for sucking blood, or at least for eating blood, eating engorged ticks that have already fed on the blood. Well, it seems that we've moved away from Lentoro just due to the camera stability there, but not a bad place to come instead to African's Old Donyo Lodge, part of Great Plains, and a couple of giraffe having a drink. Nothing really Halloweeny about a giraffe, except the fact that they are utterly weird in the way that they have been designed. But I don't think anyone could have a negative connotation for giraffes. Nice to see an eland in the background and a few ellies sheltering under the trees there as well. That's what we're doing, a whirlwind tour this morning. We're now at Hyena Pan in Botswana. Look at all these lovely ellies coming down for a drink. We saw a tiny little one here the other day, much smaller than the one having a drink at the moment. There's one on the right, tentatively having a drink. I think possibly Mum at the back there is just monitoring the little one, possibly the matriarch. Or is that a young boy? No, I think it's a young boy causing some problems. Adrian, you're asking the differences between the red and the yellow-billed oxpeckers, other than obviously the bill, although the yellow-billed oxpecker is oddly named in that it has a bicolored bill. It's red and yellow. It's not entirely yellow. The other main difference is that the yellow-billed has a pale brown rump as opposed to a dark brown rump, and also the yellow-billed oxpecker doesn't have the yellow eye ring that you see on the red-billed. Those are the biggest differences. The shape of the bill is a bigger, heavier set bill in the yellow billed as well. And generally speaking, they're more specialized at taking the more mature, I'm going to say adult ticks, or the not the pepper ticks, not the little first and second instars that ticks produce. Although they will, of course, eat any ticks they can get, but generally speaking, slightly different niches as to the size of ticks that they eat. But we won't see any oxpeckers on these elephants. They do not like oxpeckers, they do not tolerate them, and they will bat them away with their trunks. Although, to be honest, I've never even seen an oxpecker try and land on an elephant. I think over the years the species has learned that it's a fruitless exercise, or a tickless exercise. Someone should tell these youngsters to not stop wasting the nice clean water from the borehole there as shower stuff, and they should rather go into the main body of water for splashing purposes. So the adults need to teach them that that is for drinking only. Darcy Miller, you said you've read a research paper on homocops in Uganda from 1964 about their behavior. Would be interesting to read. I shall certainly go and have a look at that. But they are interesting birds, those homocops, particularly, of course, with their famed nest, the enormous nests that they build, which are hollow inside and often sort of coated or plastered with mud, and they have a tendency to stick things in their nests a bit like magpies do in the Northern Hemisphere. They collect shiny things and unfortunately bits of rubbish and seem to adorn their nests with them, but enormous nests that are created for relatively small birds, so big, in fact, that many other birds take advantage of those hammercop nests by nesting on top of the hammercop nests. But there'll be a little hole in there that the adults will enter and exit between, so they don't nest on the top. It's hollow inside, usually in the fork of a tree close to water, but a very impressive structure with thousands and thousands of individual sticks that have gone into the architecture. Interesting to watch these interactions. The herd isn't quite at rest. I think this presence of a few bulls, like the one we can see having a drink at the moment, is just disturbing them. Everybody seems a little bit jumpy and a little bit erratic in their behaviors. But Shelley 316 or 316 saying good day to you too. And yes, we would all love to be where these cameras are. And I'm glad you're enjoying watching these Wild Earth feeds. This is a wonderful form of escapism that you can be enjoying these pictures from all across Africa from the comfort of our own homes. But yes, no substitute for being there in person. I've just noticed it looks like this younger one on the right is missing almost its entire trunk. It's horrible, poor little thing. I wonder if that was a snare problem. Unfortunately, it is a big affliction of elephants getting their trunks caught in snares as they're feeding around on the ground and probing nooks and crannies. If they get a snare around their trunk, obviously the harder they pull, the tighter it gets, and they are so strong that it can completely sever the trunk. I've seen many injuries, particularly in the north of Kruger, from snare-related injuries to elephants and their trunks. But that's very short at how far up the trunk it's being cut off. But you can see little wells like this, if that's what we're going to call them, are very important for these elephants. It was able to get its mouth into the water and get sufficient water. I'm trying to think how it would actually feed. It's going to have to feed, and I've seen them do this before on sort of raised areas and use the slope to their advantage and almost graze and browse, or graze rather like a rhino or a buffalo would, and actually get its mouth closer to the food source. But that's very, very short. Even with a sort of a stunted trunk, they're usually able to manipulate food into their mouth. But I don't think I've ever seen one who's lost so much of the trunk, but still seems to be in reasonable condition. The skin's not sagging too much, so obviously getting sufficient nutrients. Incredible how um, adaptable these animals can be. But shame, we wish that one all the best moving forward. Just relax. You also noticed that as well. Yeah, very strange. When I was first looking, I thought maybe the trunk was in the water, but no trunk was forthcoming when it removed its head from the water. Shame, those snares are a big problem. There are some wonderful people around here, and all the surrounding reserves for that matter, that will go out and purposely try and remove snares. And it's horrifying how many snares are collected almost on a daily basis. I know there is a place not too far from Hoedspruit here that actually then repurposes those snares into jewelry, which is a nice way of utilizing it. But they are such horrible things, snares, unfortunately, completely non-species specific. Anything and everything gets caught in snares. Look at that one's also had some damage to its trunk. You can see some cuts. It's not sitting properly. That also looks like snare damage. Shame. I believe there was also a baby seen yesterday with on the camera that looked like snare damage. Yes, unfortunately, it is a big problem. Whether it's hyenas, leopards, lions, antelope, even the mighty elephant falls foul to snares, something we certainly do not approve of. But I'm amazed that that one is able to look like it's at least on the surface in such good condition because it must, but elephants make a plan. Oh, this one's got no tail on the left. This bull. Mercedes being, yes, poor Elliot's always upsetting to see. And so you can see the one drinking at the moment. It doesn't have quite full control over that trunk, and there's some kinks and notches taken out of it. I've seen some with gaping holes in the side of their trunks as well, and they have to sort of deal with that because water comes flooding out of it when they try and inhale. But agreed, Victoria, good to see it surviving. So, as I said, they're remarkably adaptable and it helps to have the support of a herd structure around you as well. Hannah, no, elephants are not born knowing how to use their trunk. It is a hugely complicated appendage. And so, if you look at the individual sort of small muscle groups in there, accounts vary, but anywhere between about 40 to 120,000 individual little sort of muscle fibers that are formed in groups in concentric rings to give it 360-degree flexibility or maneuverability, as well as longitudinal muscles as well to help with stretching it out and contracting the trunk, depending on what it's being used for. And despite the elephant's great brain power, it's like anything, they have to learn how to use it and develop the coordination and allow for those muscles to grow to a point that they can be controlled. And it normally takes up to about 2 years for an elephant to get full control over its trunks. And I have to say, watching a young elephant attempt to master trunkery is very entertaining to watch. They try so hard. They try to mimic the adults in terms of sort of pulling grass out of the ground or plucking leaves, but they just can't do it, and they lose control of it, and it spins around like a helicopter, and it's hilarious to watch actually. But one of life's many little delights, watching a young elephant try and work out how to use its trunk. Linny, you have a bracelet made from a snare. That's good to know. But yeah, it's good. All the proceeds from those sorts of things, hopefully, and should go back into conservation and making donations towards those wonderful people who do snare sweeps, many of whom do it in their spare time. They don't get paid for it, but it's just part of what should be everybody's duty to try and protect the wildlife in these areas. Definitely a few bulls in amongst this group, no, none of which seem to be in must. So I don't know whether it's just a coincidental gathering. Normally, you would find one big musting bull approaching the females if he's sensed an opportunity to mate. It may just be that a bachelor group has come down to drink at the same time as this breeding herd, and it's causing a little bit of discomfort amongst everybody. Oh, here's our trunkless Ellie. Come back for another drink. Get as much as you can, little one. Oh, that's horrible to see. So possibly a little bit skinny, but the skin is not hanging too badly off the elephant. You can see a little bit of ribs there, but again, this time of year, there's not much food around, so it's obviously coping somehow. It looks like almost like a clean cut. It's not ragged at all. It's like a very square cut of the trunk. I could assume, Snare, if anyone else has got any better ideas, feel free to make suggestions. But that is the shortest trunk or the most severe injury in terms of amount of trunk that's been affected that I think I've ever seen. Not in wonderful condition, a little bit emancipated perhaps, but unsurprising, particularly this time of year. Very interesting to know whether other members of the herd are actually helping, whether they are providing that little one with some food and sort of offering it up. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. Elephants so good in terms of looking after one another in that complex social structure. Interesting to see. Oh, I was just about to wonder how you're going to have a dust bath or a shower or anything like that. You can see some using the front feet to scrape mud up onto the surface, whether or possibly standing next to this one to reap the benefits of flying mud. But I imagine there's a lot of rolling around as opposed to administering or adorning herself. I think it is a little girl. Shame. Well, we've had to move just because of the camera, but I'm sure we'll go back if we can. I'd love to be able to see how that little one goes about its daily life. But for now, we've zoomed all the way down to Namibia and to Ukakoyu. Plenty of animals taking advantage of the water. Are Laura Moore, how do trunkless elephants survive? A very good question. So, as I said before, I have seen them feeding on things like termite mounds. They'll stand at the base of a termite mound and then graze the grass um, like a cow would or a rhino would, just straight into the mouth and taking advantage of the where that vegetation is on a higher plane to where well, similar to their head height. But often, when I have seen that done, that's with elephants that have got at least a sort of a half trunk or a stunted trunk, and they're able to wrap the trunk around the grass and at least pull it towards their mouth. But I mean, she has absolutely nothing to work with there. So that's why I'm very surprised at this time of year, because there isn't much grass. Elephants this time of year are using or utilizing what little leaves are around, and of course cambium. So she's potentially digging up roots. I guess she can get under the bark with her tusks, and will have to grab them with her mouth and pull the cambium off in strips with her mouth, as opposed to using her trunk. But so that is a pretty severe case, but obviously is somehow managing it. Okay, let's head over to Tau in Madikwe and see what's happening up in the northwest. It seems we've gone to Tembe Elephant Park. My apologies. And I think this is the first time we've ever been to Tembe and not seen elephants. A secret meeting somewhere about Halloween activities, perhaps. But a nice contrast in the amount of greenery seen here. Okay, let's try Town Lodge again. Ah, there we go. That is indeed Town Lodge, with a very large number of waterbuck. I think this is the most waterbuck I've ever seen here. Taking advantage of this vegetated area in the rapidly drying up dam. Rapidly having a look online to see if I can find any reports of elephants feeding elephants that have lost their trunk. I haven't found anything yet, but if any of you have seen or read or seen a video of some such thing, I'd be very interested to know because it's got to be very interested as to how that little one is surviving. Hopefully, that camera will behave itself and we can go back and watch again, because it would be very interesting to see how she has managed or how is managing to cope with that disability, I suppose, is as good a word as any. Yeah, Mindy Tillipal, I was also thinking that even if we could intervene, show trunk before, I don't think there is much that we could do in terms of making life easier for that elephant. And as you pointed out here, after seeing that elephant, you have no complaints about how tough your life is. Yeah, absolutely. Things could always be worse, hey? But elephants are so resourceful. As I said, I can only assume that other members of the herd are helping out or taking advantage if one of the adults pushes down a tree or breaks off a branch, it puts it in a position where she would be able to take food directly into the mouth without using a trunk. But this time of year must be very difficult. A lot easier in summer, of course, with the grass being higher, far more vegetation on the trees. But yeah, during winter it must be very difficult for her. But lovely to see a little bit of mutual grooming going on with these zebras. Not an animal known to groom each other for the removal of parasites. I wonder how much of this is just a social interaction and a bit of mutual scratching. Actually, almost looks like two males from the body shape. Hard to tell for now. Maybe just some sort of bonding behavior going on there. Oh, a big jump from that impala. See all the wildebeest watching on. There's something chasing that impala. I don't think so. It didn't seem to be fleeing for its life. Ah, a couple of yellow-billed ducks taking up residence next to the grey heron. Yes, definitely. It would be nice if we can find one of our crocs today. Haven't seen them the last couple of days. Xavier, no, it's not common to see an elephant cow moving around on her own or keeping her own company, but it does happen. I have seen it from time to time. What the causes are, of course, could be many, but the few that I remember seeing a few up when I was in Tanzania, they were often very old cows who had just sort of taken up residence in areas like this, really close to water, where nice soft food. Her teeth, I'm sure, were not in such good condition due to age and constant wear and tear and abrasive action on those teeth. I mean, that's normally what happens with the older elephants. They will hang out in areas where the food is easier for them to extract nutrition from. Or possibly they do get separated. Perhaps if there was a kerfuffle at some point, one may have got separated, but they're so good at finding one another through sound and through scent and everything else that I would imagine that if you do see one on her own, it's often through choice. You do get females that will split off from a large herd if resource availability is under pressure, who may go on to start her own herd and become a matriarch if a herd splits in two or a small splinter group comes off, but it's not often that you see a female on her own. Of course, she may well be part of a breeding herd that's just far more spread out. They'll be in constant communication with each other. They don't always have to be rubbing shoulders. Beautiful waterbuck with its heart-shaped nose. Mindy, tell about how little water would there need to be before a croc considers moving? I don't know. I don't think we can put a specific depth on it. I think when the danger of desiccation becomes too real, or if there's no food availability, they would be the main problems. Say they can survive outside of water for a prolonged period of time, go into a state of estivation and just slow the metabolism down and hide under the shade and pretty much just almost come to a complete standstill, kind of like a reverse hibernation. But I would think at the moment there's enough water there to keep a crocodile hydrated and wet enough to survive. No, Julia, I think that's definitely mud and not a crocodile, but good try. But I assume we are scanning for any sign of the crocs. I believe there was one seen here a couple of days ago, possibly lying somewhere in the shallows, hiding in and amongst all the grass there. Okay, I think we're going to head back to Hyena Pan. Let's see if we can find our little trunkless girl up there. And he's still milling around, a big bull in the foreground next to a little one. Let's see if we can spot that young cow somewhere. Oh, I think that's her at the front. At the back, they've just disappeared behind the one on the left. Yeah. See, there's a little bit of green by the look of it on this. Is it a Mapani tree? I'm not quite sure. I think she was just having a scratch of the tip there, but oh, it's on the bush behind. But that she would be able to get hold of, but not much to be had there. But I'd say once the rains come and there's plenty of vegetation, so life will get a lot simpler for her, certainly. Well, she's obviously been eating a sufficient amount of food to eradicate that food on the way through. Nice to see a little bit of greenery there. Just, I'm guessing it's a mapani tree. I can't really see from here, but some form of greenery. So I don't know if they have had any rain up in the Hyena Pan area, but it looks as if the trees are trying. Those rather broken ones that you can see the little one rubbing his face into also look as if they had a little bit of growth on them. But yeah, I've been watching this young female. I think she's the one behind this bull that we can see at the moment. Still waiting to see some evidence of unusual behaviour, but I think everybody's just in a bit of a go slow at the moment. I've obviously had a nice drink, just chilling in the shade. Yeah, definitely a bit more greenery than we've seen of late. Not sure it is a Mapani though, looking at those leaves. Oh, that is a Mapani. I must stick to my guns. You can see those bilobed leaves. They're looking like two butterfly wings. Even the word Mapani comes from an African word meaning butterfly. I forget which language, Songa maybe, but it does mean butterfly. As one easily seen there from the leaf structure itself. Okay, well, I'm sure we'll check in on her from time to time, but I think these Ellies are having a little bit of a post drink and swim nap. So let's head back over to Tau. A couple of nice bulls in the background. That's nice. Three-layered, four-layered approach with the impalas there as well of mammals. Mindy Tillipau, you're saying we could collar her, monitor movements, and feed her? You could do. I don't know how you would just ensure that she was the one getting food and that the others wouldn't all take it. Um, but say, however she's doing it, she seems to be surviving. So I think that a lot of the time it is best to let nature run its course. And she's obviously figured out a way around it. Whether it's her or a group effort, I'm not sure. But as you said before, there's not a great deal that we can really do in a situation like that, unfortunately. Save sort of taking her into captivity, but she's obviously handling it out in the wild. And I'm sure, in fact, I know for a fact that she would much prefer that than being stuck in a cage or an enclosure, that's for sure. So, yeah, hopefully we'll see her again if we keep monitoring that camera. It would be fascinating to try and view some interactions and particularly feeding behavior. But at least we know that she's got an access point that she can drink there with that raised lip of the borehole of where that water is coming into Hyena Pan. It'd be interesting to know if the herd knows that and often frequents that area. But as long as the water is deep enough, she can wade out into the water and drink that way as well. And she'll be able to go down on her knees potentially and graze shorter grasses. But upsetting. I'm feeling that my heartstrings have been tugged quite severely by watching that. But a testament to the adaptability and the will to survive, certainly. Oh, the beautiful cumulus clouds in the sky above town. You see with their flat bottoms, giving you the dew point, the height of the dew point temperature. Generally considered to be stable conditions when you've got cumulus clouds. Oh, let's all come and investigate that. Very interesting to see how dark that zebra dung was in comparison to the elephant dung that we saw also being released. The difference between having a tannin-rich diet versus a silica-rich diet that you find in grasses, silica turning your dung blackish, and more tanniny diet, those tannins tend to turn the dung a more browny red color. But certainly the one on the right is a boy, and the one on the left also looks like a boy. So a little bachelor coalition of zebras here, perhaps not yet established their territory, or not territory, but established their own harem, I should say. Zebras, of course, not territorial animals. They don't demarcate or defend an area, but they will endeavor to try and recruit females to their harem and then be territorial over the females as opposed to a specific area. The elephant just looks like he's contemplating life, letting the wildebeest pass him by. All right, let's head north back up to Oldonio and see what else has come down to the water for a drink. The boys are back in town, probably those ones we saw under the umbrella thorn there in the background, decided to come in for a drink. very brave approach. The elephants seem to be very tolerant at the moment, but they can get quite protective, particularly around a small water hole like this. Obviously asked very nicely. We'll see at what point the elephants decide their personal space is being invaded here. Okay, back to Tao, but I'm very impressed with those two elands came in completely indifferent about the fact that there were four massive elephants having a drink there, and equally impressed with the tolerance levels of the elephants. We've seen it at Old Onyo before, but they don't always like sharing that waterhole. This boy looks like he's just run out of batteries on his way back to the undergrowth there. Just going to have a break. Bit of narcolepsy, elephantine narcolepsy. In the middle of the field, yeah, I'll have a quick 40 winks. Daniel, I haven't seen the elephants at Tower Lodge being particularly rambunctious towards other animals at the waterhole here at Tower. I think the difference is there's plenty of water to go around. There's the big area we've seen with all the grass where all the water buck were, so this area in front of us, but there's also water off to the left where you can see that other elephant drinking. So I think there's a sufficient amount of space where they feel it's unnecessary to get particularly boisterous, but ultimately, elephants will chase anything away that they've decided they don't like, and pretty much everything will move out of their way because, well, after all, it's an elephant. But I haven't seen as much animosity towards other animals at Tau as I have in some other areas. But I think a lot of it's to do with the sheer availability of water in this area. I agree, Alan. These zebras do seem to be grooming each other more than I would normally expect. They do groom each other, but not to the extent that we would see, for example, impalas do it, or the primates. But it's all just to do with strengthening bonds between, difficult to call them family groups, but say harems or whatever bonds have been forged during that time. Whether it's anything to do with the dry season, seeing it more so at the moment, perhaps just due to the conditions, a possibility. But I agree, these ones seem to have been excessively grooming of late. Looks like most of the animals at Tau are really taking it easy today. People having a bit of a nap, standing up, lying down, everybody looking off into the distance, contemplating another day in Africa. Few silhouettes of what I assume are swallows flitting over the water. I was delighted to say I didn't see, but I heard a crowned eagle the other day, one of my favourite birds out here. Enormous eagle, specialised in hunting monkeys, often found along the rivers. I found a lovely stretch of river that I keep frequenting at the moment. Try and find some interesting new birds for that area. I mentioned the other day I got finfoot, half-collared kingfisher, trumpeter hornbills, and a couple of other things that I didn't expect to see, little sparrowhawks, an African goshawk, and heard crowned eagle the other day as well. So very nice to know that all of these migrants are back. Not that any of those that I've mentioned are migrants, but plenty of migrants back. We're hearing the cuckoos calling, red-chested, and the classes cuckoo very vocal at the moment. Haven't heard a black cuckoo yet, but I'm sure we will do soon. Barn swallows are back, European bee eaters are back. It's amazing. It's all happened in the space of a couple of weeks. Everything's just turned up in one great migratory lump, it seems. There must have been a good deal on tickets from North to Southern Hemisphere, but particularly with the onset of some rain, it'll be great to get out there and try and look for some new unusual ones. Okay, well, it seems to be everyone's on a bit of a go slow at Tau, so let's head over to the eastern side of the country and go have a look at Tembe Elephant Park. Still no elephants. Unusual. A few impalas dotted around, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of bird life. There normally is. Couldn't quite see what that was flitting past. Interestingly, that big bean in the centre there looks to have lost a lot of leaves. I don't remember it looking like that the last time I paid particular attention to it. I wonder whether that's because of the recent rains they've had down there, whether the tree has seen the opportunity and dropped all its leaves and is currently rapidly producing youngsters or young leaves coming through. Looks a lot barer than I remember it being last time I looked closely at it. A lone male impala enjoying some sustenance. Still waiting for the first little impala in this area. I think it should be, I'm not going to say any day now, but any week now. All the females are looking particularly pregnant. Not much activity from from a mammalian point of view, but always amazing to think that just underneath that glassy surface of water, you can see little ripples, countless little arthropods and fish and other animals going around their daily lives. run in solifuge the other day that was skipping around feet. I actually had a snake in my garden that we had to remove 2 or 3 days ago, a little olive grass snake who came a calling. So we caught him and relocated him to somewhere a little bit safer for the snake's own safety. Not a particularly venomous snake. I mean, it might give you a little bit of discomfort, but it's not a venom that we would consider medicinally important, that's for sure. First impressions when we saw it, though, was a spitting cobra, that sort of greyish colour, had the pinkish wash over the head and the there's an elephant, and the pale underbelly as opposed to the sort of black and salmony pink barring, yellowy barring that you get on the Mfezi, as we call it, or spitting cobra. Separated it quite quickly. Also quite a slim snake, the olive grass snake, but definitely some more summer activity in the offing. Impressive tusks indeed, Lethu. I agree. There are some beautiful elephants here at Tembe. Some very impressive set of armaments that some of them have. Here comes another one. There's normally a group of sort of 10 or 12 bulls that seem to hang out here religiously. Maybe they were off, say, having a little meeting somewhere, and they're all beginning to accumulate now. It's lovely to see a wide angle shot and just these solitary elephants just sort of drifting through the landscape. Very relaxing. Rosie Adams, as you said, the water looks so tranquil and clean. Well, it doesn't have a great number of elephants splashing around in it at the moment, but yes, it does look very idyllic, doesn't it? Emerald spotted wood doves calling in the background. Very peaceful down at Tembe today. Lovely sound, that emerald spotted dove. A little bit mournful at times, but it's a very soft and um, soothing sound to some extent. A pair of Egyptian geese having a groom as well. The amount of elephant dung scattered around the area here as well. Great for the soil, great for all the microorganisms, great for the arthropods. The birds will be picking around in there as well. and a wonderful opportunity for seed dispersal, being transported to a nice area with good quality soil and moisture. And so it won't be long till we see the first dung beetles back as well. I'm sure there are a few around who are going to, for the fresher dung at least coming out, get busy processing all of this good stuff. I think it's very faint, but I think I can hear some foam nest tree frogs coming through on the audio. That sort of noise, almost like a muted vervet monkey alarm call. Something else we very much associate with summer, and it won't be long until we start seeing those big foamy nests hanging in vegetation above the water. And we've got that pair of hardy-dar ibises probing around in the soil for little insects. Ian, I couldn't give you a sort of a blow-by-blow account of what wetland birds are normally found here. What I can tell you is things that we often see here. So we often see a variety of herons and storks and spoonbills. I have no doubt there'll be some wood sandpipers, the three-banded plovers, black crakes. I wouldn't be surprised if we would find milling around in the thicker reed beds. Um, Other than that, in terms of what I've seen here, I think those are the main highlights. But you never know what you're going to get. That's the beautiful thing about it. They do sound like foam nest frogs in the background. But those little nests they make are amazing. So this big sort of foamy mass as the female's got special glands and she produces this foam which she whips together a bit like egg whites with her back legs as she deposits the eggs, and then males come along and they one poor female and all the males trying to deliver their sperm. And then that will solidify, it'll harden, and that will protect the embryos inside from the sun and from things like ants and potential predation from other organisms. And then instead of having a tadpole stage like most frogs do that develop from the eggs in the water, the eggs inside that foamy mass will slowly start to develop, and over a few weeks, that nest will start to deteriorate. It'll start to disintegrate, and as those baby frogs that now they're going to change pretty much, sort of partially metamorphosize inside there when they're heavy enough. They'll drop down out of the nest into the water and continue their lives. So there are some interesting strategies evolved by frogs. Things like the rain frogs, they just bury their eggs in the ground and they go through the whole tadpole phase basically whilst still inside the egg and actually emerge as little froglets, which will then go and find some water from there. But hearing eastern olive toads of late, saw a plain-backed grass frog the other day. Well, the frogs are also coming out. All the swallows, probably barn swallows or European swallows. Amazing to think those little things come all the way down from Northern Europe. and fly back every year. Keep scanning these logs and trees for a little flash of blue. Looks like perfect habitat for something like a malachite kingfisher to be sitting on one of those fallen trees in the distance. Well, that was some nice tranquil moments at Tembe. Let's head back up to Botswana and Hyena Pan. Oh, there's some chakamas. I sense this one on the left wants to come in for a drink, but is not sure how he's going to be received. Tiptoe in. See the other one's posture with the ears out, just giving him a little side glance. Yep, no, not sure. A little bit possessive over the water. Reach in with the trunk. Go on, stretch. He's slightly uncomfortable, that sort of displacement behavior, pretty much sort of playing with his food, playing with his water. And Zane, difficult to say whether each group that you can see there are different herds. So they do come down and drink at the same times, and they normally greet one another, but pretty much sort of keep themselves to themselves as opposed. But this could just be one big herd. Really, we'd have to watch them for a significant amount of time and try and view any interactions between them. This looks like, say, a couple of younger bulls who are having a drink at the moment. I would say it's probably one big group, interspersed with a bachelor herd of bulls who've come down to have a drink as well. As we did see earlier, one or two larger bulls that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see hanging out with the herd still, but nobody seemed to be in must. So it didn't look like one particular male had honed in on this particular group. So it could just be a coincidental gathering of males and females, although say a couple of these bulls do look young enough to potentially just being hanging out on the periphery of the herd, but say there were one or two larger ones who should have separated themselves by now. This one is just going to the left with a floppy ear. Looks more than big enough to be independent. These all look like bulls hanging out in this area now. I'd say a good chance that most of the elephants in this whole sort of surrounding large area will know each other. They will have come across each other. They probably all have names and their own distinct smells. They probably had run-ins in the past and recognize each other. Rosie Adams, I agree. Elephants do look very contemplative, particularly this time of the day. It's hot. Everybody's doesn't want to expend too much energy in the heat. Yeah, a good time to take stock of the current situation. Big cow with a young boy in tow, and there's a big bull nearest to us. Looks as if he's just having a rest up against the tree. Brief glimpse of a starling. Flash of iridescent blue. But yeah, propping himself up on a mapani tree and having a nice little doze. Look how similar the texture of that tree trunk is to the skin of the elephant as well. Those longitudinal fissures of the mapani tree. Perfect camouflage. Looks like he's got his tusk wedged in a little broken branch there for a bit of head support. Of course, that head weighs not too far off a ton on a big elephant bull. Anything you can do to prop it up is probably gratefully accepted. No, Penelope Kenyon, there isn't much shade, unfortunately, but they've done quite a good job of finding what little shade there is. But as I said before, nice to see some of that pale green new growth on these Mopani trees. So they must have had a little bit of rain up there to stimulate the trees to produce this year's or next year's crop of foliage. Shade will be forthcoming. No sign of our little trunkless female yet. Wonder if they've moved off to be replaced by these elephants. And she was over there in that little patch of shade where we see that one bull, so maybe that group has moved on. Most of these ones all look like bulls in this area now. A couple of females with calves further back. It's going to get some funky tan lines if he stands there all day, though. Oh, we've got a hyena. Good spot. Zoomies. Sneaky hyena in the background. Just shows you must always look carefully. You never know what's hiding in the background. We had one come down and have a little bathe like this a couple of days ago as well. Looks as if his chin's getting closer and closer to the water. Don't want to drop off and get a wet muzzle. I thought there might be an elephant in the water. You could see the concentric ripples going towards the hyena, obviously being caused by that elephant's trunk. Let's see if he tolerates the hyena, or maybe he hasn't even noticed it. Took us a while to see him. Absolutely, Cat Fern. It is spa day for that hyena. Let's see if he goes for a mud pack afterwards. There's Big Bull doing his Ursula Andress impression, emerging from the depths. Nice to see this bull very much lolling against the tree. Penelope Kennedy, yeah, I did show my age a little bit there. I realised as I was saying it. But James Bond is a classic after all. In fairness, I think that was even a little bit before my time, but it's such an iconic moment. I suppose I could have gone with Halle Berry. I think she did something similar at some point. Anyway, let's not get too distracted. Back to the elephants. But no sign of our little trunkless one. I think she must have moved off in search of some food. But I really do hope that she does all right. That really was quite, I don't know what the right word was. I'm torn between sad and being impressed by how she must be dealing with everything. But hopefully she won't go too far afield, and we'll get to see her again. I'd love to be able to monitor her progress, and it will be, as I said, amazing to see if the herd themselves are actually assisting her, or if she has just made a plan to make it work. A nice example of the fact that we always say that males have more rounded heads, but this is a bull and you can see a very angular head. So exceptions to every rule. Just a little bit of pushing and shoving going on there, but it's just everybody's, I think, too hot and too lazy to do much about it. Just a little bit of, so I keep saying tactile communication. Said his piece and now wandering off. This one looks as if he wanted to come and have a drink, but I got the impression the other one was just sort of ushering him away. This one, I think, is king. See, again, this one sort of slightly submissive behavior being shown as another bull approaches. Sort of doing little loops around what looks like that little stump there. Seems to be that that's his safe area. Now, Shelley, I'm not sure what's happened to that youngster. I imagine that they've moved off. This is all bulls really in this area. Over to the right, there were a few cows and calves. There was one whose face I couldn't see from behind the tree, but looked as if it was a little more plump and less emaciated than the one that we saw before. But hopefully, say, we'll be able to check up on her again at some point. But as you may have noticed, we have left Hainapan and we've zoomed all the way southwest back down to Kikuyu in Namibia. And a line of what I assume to be wildebeest coming in for a drink. Certainly looks like it from their silhouettes. Okay, let's head over to Juma in the Sands and see what's at the waterhole there. Ah, we've got some terrapins. Are they having a little argument? Arguments to terrapins? Or just having a problem with the turning circle, perhaps? Not often we see so much activity from the terrapins. They're normally just sunning themselves. I'm assuming that these two, well, these three are actually, I don't necessarily use the word hunting behavior, but looks like they are feeding. I keep seeing what looks like chewing. I think looking for little arthropods in the water there. Whether they found a little shoal is not the right word, but a little group of insects perhaps along the margin of the water. Yeah, these are decent sized terrapins, Rosie Adams. They can get bigger than you think, terrapins, tortoises as well, for that matter. Yeah, definitely feeding on something, but there was potentially a little spate of aquatic insect life coming out, hatching and things now as the temperatures have warmed up. Feast time. Oh, here comes another one. There must be a little bounty of something in this area. No, but we're almost out of time. Less than a minute left. That went quickly. I hope you've all enjoyed today's show. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for sending in your questions and comments. I'm sure, like me, for many of you, the highlight would have been that poor little young elephant with no trunk. So we wish her all the best. But as I said, torn between feeling very sad about it and also very impressed with how far she has got and how well she is doing under the circumstances. But yeah, wherever you are for the rest of the day, enjoy it. I hope you've enjoyed these pictures as always. Stick with us for the rest of the day, and we'll catch up with you again very, very soon.